Career Center. I am on the employer partnership side of the house, which basically means I help organizations to recruit and hire Temple students and alumni in different capacities for jobs and internships. We also have a team of career coaches who help students with their career assessments and trying to figure out like how to apply your interests and your hobbies and your skills professionally to different paths. We also have a number of online resources, especially in this time, that can potentially serve you. And I'll put this all in the chat. Definitely coaches can help you with resumes and cover letters and practice interviewing so that you can feel most prepared before you go into a real live interview. They can talk about a lot of different resources for the job search and your internship, different databases and resources that they can share there. As I mentioned, with the employer partnerships team, we provide different resources, but also events like this where you can network with some alumni, but also network with a variety of different employers and professionals to understand what opportunities might be out there, but also just what skills you need to develop to get into those types of roles and that sort of thing. Also, general information sessions, and we also host all the different kinds of job, internship, career fairs that you've probably been to. And last but not least, hopefully maybe how you heard about this event today, we oversee Handshake. So every job and internship that is posted on Handshake, we filter and we definitely sift through them with a fine-tooth comb. So we want to make sure the best roles are being posted for Temple Owls. So definitely use Handshake if you have time. If you're looking to update your professional wardrobe or your professional dress and just want to try to get a new suit jacket or a different piece of your ensemble, we have a partnership with the wardrobe here, and I'll put this in the chat later too. You can email my colleague Brashay Prinder in the Career Center, and she can help you set up an appointment. They have personal shoppers that can help you pick out different outfits that would be really good to have for interviews and things like that. And then last but not least, here's some of our info for the Temple University Career Center and where we're at on our social media. And then, so I'm done with the Career Center. Now I'm going to introduce our two guests today, Vlad Lipschutz and Dan Reinert. So real quickly, Vlad is Consul Chief of Consular Section at the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. He joined the U.S. Diplomatic Service in 2003 and has served in China 3 times, Taiwan and Azerbaijan, as well as in Washington at the U.S. Department of State and U.S. Congress. Prior to becoming a diplomat, he worked as a prosecutor, a middle school teacher, and a marketing executive. Vlad came to the United States over 30 years ago as a refugee from the former Soviet Union, and he calls Philadelphia home. He is accompanied in Jerusalem by his wife and 2 daughters. We also have Dan Reinert. Special Agent Reiner entered duty at the New York field office in October 2015. At that field office, Dan conducted criminal investigations into passport and visa fraud, human smuggling, and other federal crimes. Additionally, Reiner led numerous dignitary protection details for foreign diplomats, ranging from the Queen of Jordan to the Foreign Minister of North Korea. During his tour at the New York field office, Reiner served as DSS Field Liaison Officer at the 2016 Rio Olympics, where he worked with Brazilian security forces and the U.S. Olympic Committee to ensure the safety and security of U.S. athletes and personnel. Reiner graduated from Temple University with degrees in criminal justice and philosophy and a minor in political science. While at Temple, Reiner completed internships with the U.S. Homeland Security Investigations, the Philadelphia Police Department, the Philadelphia District Attorney, and the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. Reiner currently lives in Arlington, Virginia, with his partner Sally and their pets. He is proud to be a Temple alumnus and looks forward to continuing his career in global security and public service as a Temple Owl. Also, before I forget, I don't think I included this, Vlad is a Temple alum out of the Beasley School of Law. So we'll be looking forward to hearing more from Vlad and Dan, but I think we might have lost Vlad. Oh, there we go. Okay. Great. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Vlad.
Hello, everybody. First of all, apologies for maybe less than ideal quality. You know, these campaigns for our school. Well, I'm talking to you from Eilat, Israel. If you pull out a map real quick, that's right there on the border with Jordan and Egypt in southern Israel, where I I've been here in Israel for about 3 years, and have been with the State Department for about 17 years. So I am a foreign service officer. I'm a U.S. diplomat, but normal people don't know what that means, and so they have a number of misconceptions. One of the misconceptions dates back to as old as maybe 300 years ago, where the first British ambassador to the then Republic of Venice, this is how long ago it was before Italy was Italy. He was sent by the Queen to represent Great Britain in the Republic of Venice. And when he was asked, what does it mean that you're going to be a diplomat? He said, I'm an honest man sent abroad to lie for my country. So I think that's one misconception people have, that diplomats lie for their country. Another misconception people have is that I say I'm a diplomat, but in fact I'm a spy. I'm a American version of James Bond. I think that's another misconception a lot of people carry when they hear about diplomats. A third misconception that you hear is 50 years ago, the Foreign Service used to be described as pale, male, and from Yale. Well, I'm a male. That is still true. I don't know how pale I really am. I've been out in the sun here in Israel, but I'm an immigrant. I'm a first generation American. So I certainly don't have any pedigree or blue blood in me. And I'm Jewish, so I probably wouldn't fit into Yale, and that's good because I went to Temple. So these are all the misconceptions. And my path to the Foreign Service was pretty non-traditional, but it went right through Temple. So one of the great things about Temple is a variety of study abroad programs that you can take advantage of. Temple is quite unique in that way. And I was able to benefit from that throughout my career. But the very first benefit was that when I was studying at Temple Law, in a second year, I went to Tokyo, to the campus that Temple has in Tokyo, to study abroad for a semester. And this is another pitch for the career services. The Career Services Office at Temple University, Japan, set up a series of weekly meetings with people that would come in and talk to us about a variety of jobs you can do as a lawyer in what they called international law. Well, I pretty quickly discovered that international law is actually just doing American law somewhere else. But this one guy came in from the embassy and talked to us about being in the Foreign Service, and talked to us about what it takes to join the Foreign Service. And so from that, I learned about the Foreign Service, took the oral test, took the written test, the oral test, and the security assessment. And lo and behold, 2 years after that, I was joining the State Department. This is a great career that's taking me around the world, that satisfied that hunger I have for change and for constant adventure. One of the things that I always look for in a career is that change. I'm one of those people that have a very short attention span. My attention span with any job is about 2 or 3 years. That's perfect for the State Department because every 2 or 3 years you get to go and do another job. And as a result of that, I've been able to do that through the Foreign Service. Another interesting thing that's been great about my Foreign Service career is that I got to do a variety of different jobs. I am what they call a Foreign Service Generalist. So that means in some of my jobs, I was primarily responsible for taking care of American citizens who were traveling and living in other countries, as well as screening people who might be interested in coming to the United States as visitors or immigrants. In another kind of job, I was involved in negotiating information sharing agreements with various countries so we can together prevent terrorists from traveling around the world. In central China, in this city that nobody ever heard of up until about a year ago, called Wuhan. In my job in Wuhan, I helped American businesses sell their products and promote their products in central China. I helped to put together partnerships between universities in China and universities in the United States. I organized cultural programs, went out and met many of the political and economic leaders in that part of China, and reported back to Washington about them. So all of it is to say is that not only do I change the job every 2 or 3 years, the nature of the job changes, the place where you do it changes the culture context, the political context. And to me, that is one of the most appealing parts of this career. So that's sort of the extent of my introduction. And now I'm going to turn it over to Dan, but happy to answer any questions you guys might have about what it's like to be in the Foreign Service, the best path to the Foreign Service, and anything else you might be interested in. So thank you very much.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name's Dan. I think Vlad hit it on the head as far as the diversity of jobs and things in the Foreign Service. Although he has far more experience than I do being in the Foreign Service and being in all kinds of posts around the world. That's something that I can absolutely vouch for, that your job will change every 2 to 3 years. So a little bit about me. I am from Pennsylvania, from the Lehigh Valley area. I still call that area home. I went to Temple from 2009 to 2014. I majored in criminal justice and philosophy. And while I was there, took part in a large amount of different programs and things like that. I tried to do everything I could. The Diamond Peer Teaching Program, the Harrisburg Legislative Fellowship, a bunch of internships that Holly had mentioned earlier. And I also, my favorite thing I did, I ran the Temple Outdoor Club, which was great. So after Temple, I worked as a seasonal police officer in Ocean City, Maryland for a couple months, and then came on to, or I started with DSS in 2015 at a fairly young age, generally for this agency at about 24 years old. So been with them for about 6 years. I did my initial training, got assigned to the New York field office, and then from there went to the Secretary's detail, Secretary of State's protective detail, based out of Washington, D.C., but traveled all over the world many times on very short notice. And from there, my current assignment is in our one of our headquarters visa fraud and kind of major case units, doing criminal investigations. And after some language training in fall of 2022, I'll actually be headed to our embassy in Tokyo to serve there for about 2 years. So each one of those roles is a very distinctive job and in a different environment. And that's just me being domestic, not even having done an overseas tour yet. So real quick, I just want to kind of show a couple slides here that were provided by our public affairs office. Basically, I think that it's pretty cool because they show some photos that I think really demonstrate kind of the diversity of things that we do as DSS special agents. We've got a lot of different roles, and there's a ton of ground to cover, and I'll try and keep it you know, kind of high level. But yeah, so essentially within the Department of State, there's the Diplomatic Security Service. We're the law enforcement and security arm of the State Department. There's a lot of other security professionals that work for the State Department too, including our courier service and security engineers, IT professionals. But obviously I'm here today to talk to you about being a special agent. And so there's about 2,000 DSS special agents, and at any given time, about half are assigned overseas and half are assigned domestically. And so our job, basically, we're sworn federal law enforcement officers. By law, we've got authority to carry firearms, to make arrests, to conduct protective operations. But what really sets us apart is being part of the Foreign Service. So as we just touched on, one of the main parts of the Foreign Service is changing your duty station or the post that you're at, as well as your job every 2 to 4 years. And that's true for the majority of special agents as well. So not for everybody. You're moving around the world, you're learning a new job pretty frequently, but it's extremely interesting. One of the coolest things about DSS from a law enforcement perspective is that we are the most widely represented law enforcement, US law enforcement organization overseas. So while our colleagues in the FBI or DHS may have officers or agents posted at a couple embassies or consulates around the world, we are at the vast majority of embassies and consulates full time and deal with like a whole range of issues there. So what do we do? Essentially, as I said, we're overseas and domestic. And there's kind of these four tenets of kind of our four, well, three main missions, and the fourth one I'll discuss separately. But primarily our investigative role, we investigate crimes that have a nexus to passport and visa fraud. So not necessarily just those crimes in and of themselves, but folks who are using or misusing or abusing the passport and visa process for human smuggling, drug trafficking, terrorism, things like that are kind of the crux of our investigation. So if it relates to those things, we've got a hand in it. Also, as far as what's unique to DSS is overseas, we also work to recover and bring back US or fugitives from US justice. So serious criminals who have fled to foreign countries. We work with kind of the wanting agency in the US, as well as our law enforcement partners, whatever nation that is, to actually apprehend and bring back serious criminals to the US to face justice. The second thing here is protection. So if you can kind of think of kind of like the Secret Service, different agency, very different agency, but kind of gives you the mental image of suit and tie and an earpiece and doing personal protection. That's what we do for the US Secretary of State full time, as well as visiting foreign dignitaries. I think Holly mentioned in the intro, I got to protect the Queen of Jordan, Foreign Minister of the DPRK of North Korea, German Foreign Minister Boris Johnson when he was the foreign minister, a whole bunch of other folks that come through the US on a regular basis to conduct diplomacy. We work to keep them safe and to ensure that their visits smooth and productive. We also do protection and security for a large amount of international events, such as the US Olympics and several other large meetings and events that have a large international component. So that's kind of our protection mission. The third mission here is to secure. So when we're overseas, our primary mission, just like if you're not familiar with it, an embassy will have a lot of different offices. So there'll be like the consular section, which is what Vlad's job is. There'll be the political section, the economic section. There's also the regional security office, which is in charge of, first and foremost, protecting US personnel in that country, as well as our facilities and our information. And also advising the ambassador and embassy leadership on any like security matters and liaising, being the primary liaison between the embassy and the host nation law enforcement. It's a huge role, managing a lot of programs. I'm just scratching the surface of it, but that's kind of what we do when we're overseas. And also when DSS agents are overseas, they get kind of a secondary title, if you will, of regional security officer or assistant regional security officer. And there's a whole vast, array of programs that you manage to keep our embassies and personnel safe. The fourth thing isn't necessarily a mission, but it's kind of, it envelopes all these missions, and that's to partner and to work with other people and organizations. We can't do this job alone. There's only 2,000 of us for the entire world. So a huge part of our job is liaison work with domestic and international law enforcement. So whether it's like my current role, I work with the U.S. Attorney's Office a lot to prosecute crimes, and overseas you might work with the host nation security forces to plan a visit from the Secretary of State or something like that. So that's a huge role in what we do. Moving on as far as like what you need to know, as far as if you're interested in this career, you can see some of the criteria there. They're pretty basic. Big one I want to point on is the third one down, that law enforcement or military background is not required. And I think that's a huge barrier. I think some people think that a job like this isn't for them, and I would heavily disagree with that. I think some of the best agents I've met have come from a really diverse range of backgrounds, private sector, lawyers, librarians, teachers, or even straight out of college, kind of like I am. I think it's really cool that we get a diverse group of people who want not only kind of a law enforcement career, but a career as a diplomat and basically a problem solver. So that's a huge draw for this. As far as the kind of challenges or criteria, just kind of one of the minimum, but you got to be good at written and oral communications. You got to stay reasonably fit in order to carry out your mission. Carry firearms as well. And I think the biggest thing on this slide is the adaptability and the ability to go overseas, especially in high threat locations. So we have agents right now working in Kabul, Afghanistan, or Peshawar, Pakistan, in Baghdad, Iraq. Obviously, last winter there was violence directed at the embassy there, so you'll be in harm's way at some points. But that's kind of all part of the job, and it's that combined with the moving to different posts around the world is something to consider from a personal standpoint, personal and family standpoint, if that's something that that you're considering. And this is a whole lot. There's a whole lot of information here. But basically, the hiring process takes a long time. You kind of start with answering questions on an online questionnaire. You do an in-person assessment and interview. You have to get a Class 1 foreign service medical clearance, as well as pass a background investigation, go through a final review panel, pass the physical fitness test, and then you're basically placed on a list for an 18-month period in which you could get hired for a new training class. So it's a long, kind of uncertain process, and I went through this myself. It took me about 18 months, possibly more than that. I actually had to get LASIK to qualify to meet the minimum. My uncorrected vision was pretty bad. So it's kind of a bit of a long and uncertain, not necessarily uncertain, but at times you're waiting a long time. So just be prepared for that if this is something that interests you, that it's not a quick door to walk through, if you will. And as far as the training for this, to become a special agent, we do a couple weeks at the Foreign Service Institute or the National Foreign Affairs Training Center to kind of enculturate you to the Foreign Service, to the State Department, and diplomacy in general. You do some DSS specific orientation, and then you spend about 3 months down at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. That's down near Brunswick, Georgia. That's kind of basic federal agent school. You learn the basics of criminal investigation, of the hard skills that come with that. And we do that with our colleagues in the Secret Service and the Marshal Service. It's kind of the basic school that we all go through. And then you spend about an equal amount of time at our, we actually have a new training center down near Blackstone, Virginia, called the Foreign Affairs Security Training Center, or FASC for short. And you do DS specialized training in protective operations, driving, hard skills, specific visa and passport fraud investigation. So to sum it up, it's the better part of a year. So just keep that on your radar too, if you're interested in this. But I will say it's world-class training. And for some of, this is, I believe, the longest basic training pipeline for any federal law enforcement agency. And you'll definitely come out better trained than many colleagues in similar, similar occupations with similar agencies. And then additionally, there's training you go through, that you undergo throughout your career. This is our advanced class. It's now mandatory for all special agents, in which you learn a lot of operational and tactical things, skills, both planning, conceptual stuff, and also the hard skills of how to physically hands-on do it for basically the worst case scenario in a high threat environment. And we always say plan for the worst, hope for the best, and that's kind of what leads us here, is to be extremely prepared. So a lot of training involved. Additional training, I will say, is as far as going overseas, you will receive, for a lot of posts overseas, you'll receive language training. So for instance, I'm headed to Tokyo, and I have 6 months where my full-time job will just be learning Japanese from 9 to 5, or whatever hours they are. So, and that's true for, most posts you go. Different ones have different language requirements. But I think that's always something fascinating, that you'll get paid to do significant language study throughout your career. And I'm sure Vlad can speak to that a bunch as well. So let me see. This is just some links. You can kind of find all this information through a quick Google as well, and they're on social media. And that's kind of the general, overview there. And again, a lot of photos kind of give you a picture of what we do, but it's really diverse. It's taken me personally around the world. I've been to some really cool places. 2 weeks after I finished training, I was driving an armored vehicle inside the Kremlin in Moscow. Got to go to the Rio Olympic Games. Got to be on, was sent on John Kerry's yacht while he went on a yacht trip. Trying to think of some of the other kind of crazy things, but it's definitely a crazy ride. And I can't stress enough like the diversity of it and being prepared for kind of, you know, where you'll go. I personally, I know I'm assigned to Japan, but I have no idea what country or post I'll end up in afterwards. So happy to speak more. I could talk all day about it, honestly, but that's basically what being a special agent with DSS is like in a nutshell.
This is great. Thank you so much, Dan and Vlad, for the overviews of your experiences. And we have a couple of questions in the chat. Lydia has a question about the testing that Vlad, I think you mentioned. Lydia, do you want to unmute yourself and ask it aloud to elaborate?
Yeah, I definitely can.
Yeah.
So I think I actually have a couple questions that are kind of related, but definitely relating to the process of actually applying the testing, what you have to do, what kind of is expected for you. And then I also wanted to ask too about like timeline wise, how long it would take, what you guys would recommend to do it. Because I have wanted to go to the State Department ever since I studied abroad in Cuba last summer, or 2 years ago actually, and I want to do the Peace Corps before I go to grad school, before I actually like seriously think about going into the State Department or like foreign service careers. But with everything going on now, I just don't know how well that timeline is working out. So I just kind of want to hear more about that as well if possible.
So I can speak a little bit about the foreign service track. And then address the timeline issue. So there is no, let me emphasize, there's no specific training or background. There are no specific majors that you have to bring in order to apply for the foreign service. In fact, when I entered the foreign service, you didn't even have to have a bachelor's degree. I'm not sure if that's still the case or not, but in my introductory who were former musicians, we had people who were former lawyers, we had people who were came from the world of business, the world of academia, all kinds of backgrounds, a number of people that were former Peace Corps volunteers. So there isn't a particular major or a field of study that you have to do. There's a number of tests. So the first test after you apply will be the written test. And this written test is essentially trying to determine whether or not you have a broad amount of knowledge. It's not testing in-depth knowledge about any particular subject. And it is because of what Dan and I talked about. And that is, you're going to be changing jobs every few years. You're going to be changing cultures. You're going to be changing political, economic, social context in which you work. So what's important is to be able to learn quickly, to be able to learn about a lot of things, to be very curious about a lot of things if you are a foreign service generalist. So the test covers everything from history and politics to geography to basic economics and basic understanding of technology, but you're not expected to be an expert on any of these things. I think the easiest way to describe what you need to know in order to pass the written foreign service exam is, if you guys have seen, or if you haven't, you can go to a library or go online and take a look. The Economist magazine, it comes out, you know, it's a weekly magazine, and it's got a US edition, although it's a British magazine originally. And if you look at it from cover to cover, it covers everything. It covers politics, it covers economics, it covers business, culture, technology, social issue, everything and anything. And it covers all of the world. It's one of those publications where the first page could be about China, and the third page could be about Mali, and the fourth page could be about Ecuador. So, and when I actually joined the State Department on my very first training day, I got there bright and early. I walked into the training room. There were a couple of people already sitting there, and half of them are reading The Economist. So what I like to say is, if you read The Economist for a few years and you find that everything in The Economist is interesting to you from cover to cover, then you're probably A, suited for the foreign service, and B, you'll do okay on the written test. The passage rate fluctuates on the written test, but I think it's about 40% or so of people that take it pass it. And then after you pass it, they take a further look at your documents, and then they invite you for an oral assessment. And that's a day-long exercise where you go through a variety of exercises. I used to have a really good way of describing it, but part of the problem about being in the foreign service is that you're overseas, and so your cultural context becomes dated. In addition to the fact that I'm getting to be old. So if this makes sense to you, great. If it doesn't, please tell me. But if you've seen Men in Black, the original movie, they call Will Smith's character to test to join Men in Black, and they're taking this test and they're giving a variety of tasks. But what the test is about is not actually what the tasks are about. And the most unlikely of the people passes the test. So what they're testing in the oral part of the examination, they're not testing any substantive knowledge. They're giving you a variety of tasks to see how do you perform under pressure? Can you speak under pressure? Can you write under pressure? There is a variety of group exercises where you are there together with other people that are being tested because they want to see how do you work as a group in the group. Are you able to get along with other people? Are you able to advance and compromise and bring people together? So you go through that oral test. That is a much more difficult test to pass. I would say on my test day, there were maybe about 30 folks taking it and only 2 of us passed. So once you've passed the oral test, you go through an extensive security clearance process. Studying in Cuba is going to make it a bit longer. But that being said, me prior to joining the State Department, I was born in another country. I worked in Korea, in South Korea for about a year prior to going to graduate school. I studied in Tokyo. So, even with all those foreign travels and foreign experiences, I was still able to get through a security clearance process. And then, like Dan mentioned, you're also placed in the registry. And as they determine how many people they need to bring in every year and what your place is in that registry, they're going to bring you, they're going to invite you to join a class. Altogether, I would say it was about, for me, a 1.5 to 2 year long process. But like I said, I had a lot of foreign experience, which required additional background investigation. In terms of the timeline and what you're describing, I think actually that's a perfect sequence. I think it's really useful to come in with some experience, some level of professional experience. It doesn't matter what that experience is, quite frankly, but it just makes you a more compelling candidate. You're able to handle a lot of the questions and all the testing, I think, with more confidence. Having some experience overseas is helpful, but experience dealing with other cultures, even if you're doing that in the United States and adjusting to new environments, I think is very, very valuable. I think I've talked enough. I hope I answered your question.
That's great. Thank you. Lauren, Ross, you had a question about the assignments. Did you want to ask that out loud?
Yeah, but I think Dan answered it when he said, like, I don't know where I'm going after Tokyo. It's just kind of like wherever it takes you.
Yeah, I mean, just to shed a little light on it, and I'm no expert at this, but essentially, your assignments are determined through a bidding process. So essentially, you have a bit of preference in saying that, hey, I would like to go, here or there for this reason or that reason. But at the end of the day, you sign an agreement, and I believe this is true for generalists as well, but sign a worldwide availability agreement, basically saying, I will go wherever, whenever. And so you do your best to figure out where you can go, what would work for you and your family situation, your personal situation, and what you want professionally. And you work through, there's a whole process, and you have folks who kind of advocate for you that are, your career development officers, and you work with them to try and find a good fit. But at the end of the day, when you're in that process, you're not really sure. And as far as projecting down the road beyond your next assignment, there's really no way to know. So double-edged sword in that respect, that it's it's unpredictable, but it can keep it very exciting, I think. So hope that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, and I just had a follow-up question for Mr. Vlad as well. So for the 28 people who didn't pass that test that day, do they like get another chance, or is like that just it?
You can take the test, but the written test and the oral as many times as you like. I happen to have gotten lucky and passed it on the first try, but it certainly I have plenty of colleagues that took the test multiple times and were able to pass. I would like to emphasize though, waiting for the oral test to start, I was in my testing group. These are the people that would go through testing exercises with me. And you know how I mentioned that the Foreign Service used to be pale male and from Yale. So one of the folks sitting with me, his grandfather was a special assistant to President Eisenhower. Another was a UN lawyer working in Bosnia. Someone else thought that Peace Corps wasn't tough enough, so they joined some other through the Amazon to get to their volunteer site. And I remember sitting there going, okay, so I taught English in Korea and I studied abroad at Temple, but I certainly didn't work for the UN, and I don't have a grandfather who worked at the White House. But at the end of the day, the two people remaining that passed the oral test was little old me and another guy who spent 20 years in the military and just finished his military service and was looking for a second career. So in other words, that opportunity is truly available to everyone. And I can't emphasize that enough. I worked for, I would say, half of my bosses in the Foreign Service were women, from ambassador to heads of sections to heads of bureaus within the State Department. For what's definitely true for my generation and younger generation of the Foreign Service is the diversity of our diplomatic corps today. You might not get to see it on television yet because our senior leadership, are still guys and gals that are probably very diverse organization that welcomes people with all kinds of backgrounds.
Like you're frozen, Vlad. Maybe I can pull up another question and then, oh, there, are you back?
Could you hear me at all?
Yes.
Or was I just talking to myself?
Yeah, no, you for the last few minutes, I think, or not minutes, seconds. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was finished. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, this is 2021. We're all living it. You're doing great. Thank you so much for that. I was going to hop over to Deja if you wanted to ask your question, Deja Shelton, out loud.
Okay, hi. Thank you for allowing us to come and speak with all of you today. It was very informative and very helpful. I have, I think, maybe 2 or 3 questions. My first question is obviously, like Holly just said, how has COVID-19 affected your organization? And what, when going further, it's still my first part of my first question, but how have, what are this, has the organization planned for anything in the near future with COVID-19 with their future applicants?
Dan,
you want to take a crack at what it was like in Washington?
As far as
and I'm happy to talk about what it was like overseas.
Oh,
yeah, I was going to say I'm domestic right now. Working in the Washington D.C. area, and so I think COVID affected us as far as I think the way that many other government entities and private sector are handling it, as far as maximizing telework and trying to keep folks when they do have to be in the office or whatever, taking appropriate measures. As far as organizationally, though, from where I sit with diplomatic security, a lot of our missions have to go on. We cannot just stay home, from an embassy in a high threat location or basically anywhere in the world, and we still need folks to protect, the Secretary of State and foreign diplomats and such. So I think it's been a challenge for everybody. I think they've been managing it, responsibly as far as implementing the CDC's measures and things like that. I think it's one of the unique places where you have to, we're all about, and again, we're in diplomatics, we're all about risk management. and that includes, the pandemic. So I don't know how it'll affect future hiring or the hiring process at the moment. I believe it's still ongoing, but yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have too much for that part of your question.
That's
Vlad,
understandable.
did you want to chime in?
I can touch upon what it was like and what it still is like serving overseas, and then the hiring process is, I'm confident, is continuing, and they were able to bring in a new class of recruits, and in a short time adjust the way that they do initial entry to part in person. And in fact, when you join the Constitution, and oath was administered virtually over Zoom, kind of like the work of the department is still going on. In terms of overseas, obviously, where I am and so when COVID first hit, and it arrived here faster than it did in the United States, we still had thousands and thousands of Americans in country. So even though the country shut down and continued to assist Americans to get home, and to provide them with information about local restrictions and rules, and so we kept going. We switched to a split team situation, and we kept a very trying experience, I would say. But thankfully, we had a lot of colleagues to work with. For example, Dan's colleagues in diplomatic security here. So we kept coming in because we needed to help Americans, but we couldn't do that if Dan's colleagues didn't show up to work to protect the building that we're in. And so us folks that are taking care of Americans and diplomatic security were there in the office every day. And in the end, we ended up assisting thousands of people to return to the United States. It is certainly a very, very challenging to be away from home in a crisis like this. Under normal circumstances, there were many things that myself and my family missed about family and friends back in the United States. We missed birthdays, we missed graduations, we missed new kids being born to the family, we missed loved ones passing. But during COVID in particular, obviously, you're thousands of miles away. For a while, you weren't able to travel. And so I think a lot of us were concerned about family and friends and loved ones back in the US during COVID. But what you have to remember is that that is part of responsibility you take in when you join the State Department. We are in the Foreign Service, and service is not there by accident. You are here to perform a public service, and it comes at some level of sacrifice. And for some of our colleagues, it means putting their life on the line on a regular basis if they serve in high threat environments. For a lot of us, it meant remaining in our place and continuing working through COVID to help Americans, to continue scientific cooperation between our countries to help develop vaccines, help develop therapies. So certainly COVID impacted us in a very significant way. But to me, looking back on the past year, was a tremendous opportunity to actually be of service to the American people and to help people in a very, very real way.
Sort of hitting on that, that was helpful. Yeah, no, thank you. And then sort of along those same lines and like sort of pivoting for Dan about like the commitment and the sacrifice. Have you ever felt, this is from David Chodor, I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. If you want to ask it aloud, your question.
Sure. Okay. So yeah, for Dan, my question was, have you ever felt like you were in serious danger at any point doing your job? And I also had another question for Vlad, but I don't know if you want me to say that too.
Just for, yeah, we'll try for Dan for now.
Okay.
So as far as like a direct, like been under attack, I have not personally. I think one of the kind of challenges of doing kind of protection work like we do is that a lot of the threats we face aren't something that is necessarily apparent. You know what I mean? So, things are going well until you're attacked or until there's, a direct threat, because a lot of, the dignitaries we protect and facilities we protect are targets, not necessarily just of opportunity, but of terrorist groups or folks who would spend time to plan and take every advantage that they have to, to attack it. So that said, yeah, no, I don't feel like I've personally been at risk in that way. I've definitely been to some interesting situations as far as different places I've been around the world. Been in N'Djamena, Chad, and some parts of Rio de Janeiro were very dangerous. I think off the top of my head, it's just some other odd kind of high threat places. But yeah, I wouldn't say personally in danger, but I think there's always that element there. Even domestically doing criminal enforcement work, if we're doing an arrest warrant or search warrant or something like that, you don't necessarily know how somebody's going to react to it. So it's kind of always there and at the back of your mind. And like I said before, we're in the risk mitigation business. So not just from a personal from a personal preparation standpoint, but also within DSS, within the State Department, we have our threat analysis folks who do their best and employ a lot of our US government partners to try and gather the information on the threats that face us. And that all goes into the risk calculus for the things that we do. So sorry, it's a bit of a general answer. I don't think I have any, I was running from a hail of bullets story, but I will say I did touch on it earlier. My colleagues, guys and gals that I worked very closely with were kind of on the front lines of the embassy in Baghdad last New Year's when it was attacked. Literally kind of, facing down thousands of armed and angry protesters. And, we had personnel sustain injuries, and luckily it came to a conclusion that was not, the embassy was not overrun, and we were able to protect our personnel. But that's always a kind of a fact there. So yeah, I'll pass it off to Vlad. I don't know.
I was going to say, yeah, that's, I think, a specific question because of your line in security. I was going to move another student, Alyssa Blocker. Hi, welcome. Yeah, do you want to ask your question about the language requirement?
Sure. So my question was about, Dan, you were talking about how you're learning Japanese, and once you go there, that's going to be a huge part. That's basically, part of your job is continually learning the language and trying to master it as much as possible. So, and I know a lot of people that go into foreign service, sometimes they already have a second language on their belt. But I was curious, are there people that get hired that haven't necessarily mastered a second language?
I'm a prime example of that. I speak English, bad German, and sarcasm. Those are my three languages. So I am very much looking forward to learning a new language. I have taken advantage of some of the like online language learnings we have. For instance, I spent last year for a couple of months, or for about half the year, spent brushing up on my German through online kind of distance learning. Which is something that you can do when you're part of the State Department. But yeah, no, I am looking forward to that. I don't know it, and I think a lot of my colleagues are in the same boat. They get hired, have a strong interest in other cultures and other languages. And one of the strongest things about being in the Foreign Service is the fact that the ability to learn those things is afforded to you. And it's not necessarily just language too. There's also cultural classes too, to learn about the norms and customs and places that you might go if they're substantially different from what we have here in the US. And I'm sure Vlad can speak, having been to many more posts, and I haven't even reached one overseas post yet, can speak to languages far more than I can.
So I can tell you about my personal experience. So I came in into the Foreign Service speaking Russian. at a near native level. And I was convinced, my wife and I, when I joined, were convinced that we're only going to be sent to a Russian-speaking place. And I served only in one place where Russian was a sent me to learn Chinese. And over the course of my career, I actually spent full 2 years and a year in Taipei at a field school. So they will teach you the languages that they want you to learn. And sometimes I know folks come in saying, you know, I learned German or I learned Spanish and I want to spend my entire career in places where they speak those languages. And the department can say that's great, or they can say that's very nice, but actually we need you to learn Portuguese or Swahili and go where we need you to go. So that's one piece of it. Another piece of it is you get language training before you come to post, before you go overseas in Washington. If it's a very difficult language like Chinese, Japanese, Arabic, you get you go through a 2-year program where you study for a year in the United States and for a year in a country where they actually speak the language, which makes a huge amount of difference. And then once you start working at an embassy or a consulate, there is something called a post-language program where you are entitled to a couple of hours of additional language instruction every week that State Department pays for. So not only are you expected to learn the basics of the language before you go, but they pay to make sure that you have an opportunity to practice the language with a teacher for a couple hours every week, if that's what you wish to do. So don't think that because you don't already speak a foreign language, you can get into the Foreign Service. That being said, there are certain languages called critical languages, which give you an advantage when you join the State Department. So if you speak one of those critical languages and you can go in careers.state.gov and look to see what they are, it gives you an extra boost and an extra couple of points when you're competing to get into the State Department.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Deja, I know you had a follow-up question if you want to unmute yourself.
Okay, yeah. My 2 questions were, one, yeah, thank you, Vlad, for speaking up about these questions about languages, because I'm a Spanish major, a Chinese minor, and a French certificate, so that really adheres to my interest. So I'm glad you've spoken up about it. So when you say a certain boost, what do you mean by what do you mean by the boost? Would you have to take extra tests as well in order to compete with other people who also have that language background as well?
So if you speak, if you're competent in one of these critical languages, you can take a test, and it's a telephonic test. And if you pass that test at a certain level of competency, then it gives you a couple of extra points. So what happens is after you pass the written test and after you pass the oral test, you're put on a registry, and that registry is ranked. And the registry is divided by specialty. So they might have a diplomatic security registry. They might have a political officer registry, economic affairs officer registry, consular affairs officer registry. And where you are in that registry depends on how many points you got when you pass the test. And you can boost yourself up by testing at a certain level in a critical language. So French wouldn't be one of those languages, but Chinese would be. And there are a number of other languages. I honestly don't remember what they all are, and they change a little bit all the time. So if you look at careers.state.gov and you look for critical languages, you should be able to find that information.
Okay. And my second question, I don't know if this is my last one. Does the DDS encourage other applicants for furthering their education, such as getting master's or doctorates? Dan, you can pitch in if you have any information.
So I'm sorry. So you're saying whether having an advanced degree will help you, if I'm understanding your question correctly?
I wanted to know that, say if you want to further your education, will DDS actually assist you in furthering your education? Like, I do want to get my master's and my doctorate. I wonder if someone would assist me with that as well.
So actually, great question. And I probably should address it earlier, but there are a lot of continuing education programs. Now, I'm just speaking, again, I'm just speaking as a I'm, as a DSS special agent, and I know there's differences between like for Vlad being like an FSO generalist and different other like specialties, different continuing education opportunities. But I know for us, there's a lot of opportunities to go to various, I don't remember all of them, but I know there's master's programs that you apply for and that you can go to. I'm trying to think, I know there's ones, a lot of the ones, at least for us, relate to some sort of security or, either strategic security initiatives or intelligence related things. So for instance, one of my colleagues right now is about to start in the fall to start a year-long master's program at the National Intelligence University to do a master's in strategic studies. And, you have to go through the normal kind of application process, take GREs, do applications, kind of like you would normally. But when you start the program, that's your full-time job, and you're still earning your State Department salary, and you're still considered an employee, but your full-time job is just to get that master's. I'm not sure about doctorate level things, and I'm not entirely sure how many institutions are involved in it, but I just know for DSS specifically, it's a lot of the military related ones. So it's like the Army War College, the National Intelligence University, the Naval Postgraduate School, places like that, you can get career related advanced degrees. I'm not sure. And there's another thing too, also within the State Department, there's also the opportunity to take leave without pay. So say you're set on getting an advanced degree that, that is kind of outside that scope, there's the opportunity to basically just step out of your State Department career, pursue that, or it could be another interest or something else. I'm not entirely, I believe it's up to 3 years or something like that, and then come back right in your role with the Foreign Service to do that. And then just a quick kind of add on to that as far as taking leave away. I can speak from DSS. A lot of my colleagues are in the military as well, who are on reserve status, and they also do a very good job of balancing that too. And you'll get time to go away to do your annual training or to do to go on active orders or something like that, and then step back into your job. So I think it's pretty flexible in terms of that. But yeah, I think there should be more information available, like Vlad was saying on careers.state.gov.
I can speak a little bit about some of those opportunities. So they exist at different levels of your career. So maybe I'll start with in reverse from where I am. Actually, I am going to be going to a master's degree program come this fall because I'm a glutton for punishment and one graduate degree is not enough. There is a program where the State Department will, if you apply and you're selected, I'm going to be going to what's called the National Defense University, which is in Washington, D.C., and it's run by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the Department of Defense. And so I will be studying in a master's program at something called the National War College, which is focused on national security strategy. And so you have that opportunity at a more senior level to go and spend a year studying at this school. And I'm going to continue to receive my salary, and my job for a year will be to go and study. And this program is specifically for people in the national security field. So it'll be people from the military, people from the law enforcement community, people from the intelligence community studying together. But at every level of the Foreign Service, you have this opportunity. So at what we called a mid-level, you have a couple of opportunities. There is a program in Princeton, at Columbia, and at Tufts University. These are three Masters in International Studies programs that you can apply for. And if you get in, then you will continue to receive your salary. And for a year, you can get that master's degree. In addition, there are programs available through the military education system that Dan mentioned, at every level. So for me, I'm going to a more senior level training, but each branch of the military, Army, Navy, Air Force, and the Marines have their own what they call staff college. And so you can go there for a year and get a master's degree, generally speaking, in international affairs or national security. In addition to that, each of those schools also offer hybrid programs where you study, it's 2 years instead of one, but you do that while you work, and you go back to the actual educational institution maybe for a couple of weeks during that period of time for intense in-person seminars. All of the programs I just mentioned are free. So not only are you getting paid, but you're not paying tuition to attend any of these programs. In addition to that, the State Department itself, for people who are experts in economic officers, but don't necessarily have a graduate level academic background, they run their own what they call economic tradecraft course, where you don't get a master's degree, but you get a master's degree in economics content-wise by attending this program, which is combined with an internship at one of the sort of economically oriented U.S. government agencies, Department of Treasury, the Fed, or something like that. Finally, Dan and I are most directly familiar with Foreign Service Generalists and DS. But there are also other people who work at the embassy that do all of the things that need to be done so that our missions can function. So like any other organization nowadays, we have an, for lack of a better word, IT department. So we have people that run our systems, maintain our communications. So they're, and so for them, they also have a graduate level education they can attend where they can get a master's degree in an IT related field. If you are a consular officer and you do a lot of work related to assisting victims of crime or victims of kidnappings and things like that, there's a master's degree program in social work that you can take advantage of. So there's a variety of opportunities for you to further your graduate education. I'm not familiar with any PhD programs that the department will sponsor. So if you get to that level and you're set on getting a doctorate, then what Dan mentioned, which is taking time off to complete that part of it, you have that option available to you. I hope that's helpful.
This has been so good with so much information that you both were able to share and so much time to spend with your fellow owls today. So thank you so much to everyone and to the students for hanging in there and asking such really good questions and for being present on this, for most people in Philly, warm, sunny day, staying online and everything. So yeah, this has been